Madam President, like 17 million other Americans, I watched the January 6th committee and its latest session last Thursday night. For 2 hours, I was there watching closely as they presented witnesses and evidence of the obvious. It reminded me, Madam President, that our committee, the Senate Judiciary Committee, last October, released a report that showed in alarming detail how former President Donald Trump tried to bully the Justice Department into overturning an election which he lost. Our report showed just how aggressively the defeated president tried to hold on to power, how some within the Justice Department were actually conspiring to help him, and how hard the department's leadership had to work to prevent Trump's illegal scheme from succeeding. We knew when we produced our report that it was just one chapter in an intricate plot to subvert America's democracy. In 8 public hearings over the last 6 weeks, the House Select Committee to investigate January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol has laid out in clear and chilling detail more chapters in the plot to overturn the 2020 presidential election. The facts are damning. What makes them even more shocking and credible is that they've been revealed under oath, not by former President Trump's political foes, but by people who once believed in him, people who worked with him for years, close aides, advisors, even his own family members. Madam President, I'm sure you remember January 6, 2021. Those of us who were in this chamber that day will never forget it. We were here in the Senate to count the electoral ballots forwarded from the states to the Senate and the House to confirm the results of the 2020 presidential election. We heard the furious mob outside. They attacked Capitol police officers with hockey sticks, iron bars, toxic bear spray, flagpoles, whatever weapons they could find. The Trump mob was on the march. They smashed windows and doors, broke into this Capitol building. Capitol police officers ordered the senators to evacuate the chamber immediately. I remember it well. They first told us, well, wait here, this will be a safe room. 10 minutes later, they said, leave through these back doors as quickly as you can. The mob has taken it over the Capitol. We rushed to a secure location. For hours, as the Capitol Police and D.C. Metropolitan Police battled the mob in brutal hand-to-hand combat, we asked the same questions. Where's the protection? Where's the National Guard? Where's the president? Donald Trump set this carnage in motion by riling up his supporters with the big lie and ordering them to march on the Capitol. And we thought to ourselves, why won't he tell them to stop? This has gone too far. The public hearings of the January 6th committee have answered the question in frightening detail, where was the president? We now know from last Thursday's hearing, Donald Trump knew within 15 minutes of finishing his remarks that the mob was on its way to attack this building and the people inside. What did he do? What did President Trump do for 3 hours and 7 minutes? He sat in his private dining room next to the Oval Office watching the violence on TV. He refused to contact his national security leaders to defend the Capitol of the United States of America. He refused pleas from congressional leaders of both parties, from his own staff and family, from his allies in the media, at Fox News, to call off the mob. He refused to walk less than 60 seconds to the White House briefing room and to make a simple statement asking the violence to stop. He was silent, and he watched Fox News every second of that 3 hours and 7 minutes. We learned that members of Vice President Pence's Secret Service detail actually thought that they might die as they confronted this mob. As some of those agents made what they feared might be their last calls to their families to tell them that they loved them, President Donald Trump sent out a tweet telling the mob that Vice President Pence had betrayed them. Instead of calming the riot, Donald Trump poured gasoline on the fire. Illinois Representative Adam Kinzinger, a Republican member of the January 6th committee, summed it up well. He said, and I quote, "Trump didn't fail to act. He chose not to act. Only when it was clear that his coup had failed did Donald Trump reluctantly record a video telling his supporters to leave the Capitol and go home, and carefully chose his words, we could tell from the outtakes, not to concede the big lie. Not a word of condemnation about the violence, not a word of concern for the police officers who battled that mob to protect our safety and our democracy. More than 140 police officers, Capitol Police, D.C. Metropolitan Police, suffered serious injuries on January 6th. Where is this president who loved law and order? Silently watching on Fox. Over the next few days and weeks, sadly, several officers who defended the Capitol died. Not a word from former President Trump. In the committee's earlier hearings, we learned how the president had ignored his own aides and advisors and relentlessly pressed false claims of voter fraud, listening to his gifted legal counsel, Rudy Giuliani, even when he was told repeatedly that these claims were wrong. We learned how he pressured Vice President Pence to go along with the plan to overturn his loss, even after he was told by the experts around him, President Trump, it would be illegal. We learned how President Trump pressed elected leaders in key states to change the vote totals in their states. When that failed, he pressed allies to send false slates of electors that would make him the winner. We learned how he summoned a mob to Washington and turned them loose on this building, even after being told the mob was carrying weapons. And even after all the harm his big lie has done to our democracy, he's still relentlessly peddling it. Outtakes aired by the House committee last week show that on the day of the insurrection, he still refused to say the election was over. This little man just can't bring himself to accept reality. Wisconsin's Assembly Speaker, who happens to be a Republican, said that Donald Trump called him to urge him to overturn the state's vote in the 2020 election. When did he call him? 2 weeks ago. He's still on a rampage. The Senate will soon consider a bipartisan electoral count reform act to make it plain that a presidential election cannot be overturned by wrongful partisan interference by a vice president or any state or congressional officials. I support this effort. Senators Klobuchar, King, and I offered our own ideas several months ago on this anticipated Electoral Act reform. I hope that this bipartisan effort can get 60 votes in the Senate. I hope that 10 Republicans will join us in modernizing this law so it works for today. It was written in haste in the middle of a political controversy in the 19th century. Some of the sections of that law are almost unintelligible. Let's clarify it. Let's give the American people an assurance that we learned a lesson January 6, 2021, and in that election that preceded it. And in that lesson, we learned the American people want their votes to count accurately, honestly, and fairly. Ultimately, however, the only way we can protect our elections and our democracy is by respecting the rule of law and the will of the American people and telling them the truth. By laying out the truth clearly for the American people and for history. The January 6th committee is performing an invaluable public service. They deserve our respect. One closing comment. There wasn't supposed to be a committee in the House of Representatives, Madam President. You remember, and I do too. The proposal was for a bipartisan commission to be created to investigate this travesty on January 6th as they had investigated 9/11. Take politics out of it. Take elected officials out of it. Bring together people who are respected from across the political spectrum and get to the bottom of it. That proposal for a bipartisan commission was stopped by Republican leadership in the House and the Senate. After all of the statements they made, expressing outrage over January 6th, when it came time to appoint the commission, the bipartisan commission, they refused. There's only one conclusion you could draw. They don't want to face the truth. They don't want the truth to be on the record from a bipartisan commission. Luckily, in the House of Representatives, the January 6th committee has achieved that, and there's more to come. I might add, people say, well, why didn't the Senate Judiciary Committee take this on? It's a very valid question. And the difference is this. In order to issue a subpoena from the Senate Judiciary Committee in such a committee hearing, we need to have agreement from at least one Republican member of the committee. We had no assurance that that agreement would be offered. So I supported the January 6th committee in the House, and I'm glad that they've moved forward as they have.